Hello everyone, this is Betsy from ideastimestwo, and I have a tutorial for you today. I thought we would learn how to make a snippet roll. And what is a snippet roll? It is fabric collaged, and you can use this for it has, particular applications probably to junk journals, but you can snip off part of it if you want to use part of it on a page, in a cluster, or to become a cluster even, or a larger amount like this much for a pocket, or a side tuck, or that type of thing. You can snip off any, like if you just want this bow, you can snip this off. So it becomes something you can take apart and use each individual element or a strip of elements. You could even use this on a cover, I would imagine, on a junk journal. I think that would be really cute too. So anyway, it has sort of that usage. You can, if you think outside the box, you could probably use it for a lot of other things, decorating picture frames, a package, a card, so many things. So anyway, that's what a snippet roll is. Probably most of you guys know or have used them before. So, but that was just to spark your imagination in case you have not heard of it before. So anyway, I am going to go over what I did on this one, and then we'll backtrack a little bit and we'll start with the basics and how you put it together. So I'm going to bring this way up to the camera and try to get my lighting so that it is actually helping me and not hurting. Okay, all right. So it is on a muslin base, and then you put fabrics and ribbons and lace, whatever, to cover the muslin. But what I'm going to go through right now are just the things that I put onto the collaged bits, so you can see, get some ideas on what to put on top of your basic roll. So my fabrics and laces kind of all went, well, on here they're vertically, and so it's basically lines of background. And so when it came time to do the snippet part, I was putting things at angles and adding little strips of lace at an angle. So that's what I did here, and that's what makes it look sort of random and fun. All right, so all of these pieces are sewn on either by machine or hand stitched. This is a little piece of fabric. It's a Tim Holtz fabric that had rulers, and so I just snipped off the 56 and put that on there. So this lace is a strip of lace that I put in the back of this picture. The picture is paper, and I stitched that with a Zig Zag Stitch right on there. I had a ticket that I cut out of some decorative paper. I just cut that out and just clipped it right on. And what I usually do is, when I have a little arrangement that I like, I'll put just a smidge, a few dots of glue on the back of it, and then glue it down, and then take it to my sewing machine, and then do a little grouping at a time. So here's a little ruffled fabric here, and I hand sewed a ribbon bow on that. This is a vintage pearl button, and this is a little lace from some Happy Mail that I got a long time ago, and it's just a little flower snipped out of a larger piece of lace. This is paper stitched on, and I usually ink the edges too, because this is more of a vintage feel. This lace here is just sewn on at an angle, and this is a yarn that I had purchased at a sewing show, and she had a little stash of beautiful fibers that all coordinated, and this is, I don't know what kind of yarn they call this, but this is a decorative yarn. On a large jump ring, I just attached this butterfly charm, and I just threaded it through the lace so it stays right on the lace. And these are some paper flowers, and they're stitched. They're not stitched. I think they're just glued, but this there's a square of fabric that I just stitched on, so that becomes the background for the flowers. This is a paper image. These images are all from GeckoGalz. And I'll show you in a minute some of the things I like to use when it comes to making the snippet roll. These are just miscellaneous scraps of ribbon and sari silk, and I kind of bunched them together in the middle and sewed a button on. This is a trim, and sari silk too. Those are both in the background. Here's more yarn. It's eyelash yarn. And then I had some twine, and I sewed a bow. I made like a triple bow. Just sewed that at the top there. And this is a paper medallion that I sewed on, 2 of them, kind of put on at an angle. Here's more of that decorative yarn. And so whereas this section had more of the reds and oranges, this one had more of the blues and the greens. And then this is just a series of 3 little buttons I put on there. There's another piece of lace that I put at an angle over the top of everything. Just a square of fabric here, like a little patch. Here's a garment pin with a charm that I had, and this image is from one of the sheets I had from GeckoGalz, so I put that inside of that. So you can see here I've got smaller lace too, and wider lace, just all kinds of various things. We'll go over that. This is paper. I kind of had it hanging over the edge and trimmed it off just for a little visual interest. I put a tiny little label here. I think this was a Tim Holtz sheet of sticker labels that I had, and I sewed that on because there's no way a sticker label would actually stay on there. This is a little safety pin, and I have a charm dangling from that, little bird charm. And I had also put it at an angle, a scrap of lace and some burlap, and I sewed that on underneath. There's a little bingo card made out of paper, another satin ribbon bow, and I put a little flower on there. Here's an envelope I made with my mini envelope board punch. This one here. I made it, I think there was one size smaller, a 1 inch by 1 inch, but this one is actually, I think, a 1 inch by 2 inch. And before I stitched it down, I put the ribbon underneath the envelope. I left it, did I leave it open? I don't think I did. And so I just stitched around the 3 edges of the envelope, and it does open, and I put a little image in here with a ribbon tab, so you can pull it out, because sometimes these tiny things are a little bit hard to manage. And I won't tie that back up right now. So this is paper sewn on, a little ribbon I had put going that way, another little scrap of fabric, like a patch. This is another number from the Tim Holtz fabric, 57 this time. We're moving along. This is a garment pin with a charm, metal charm, a medallion image. This is just a little music portion of a piece of paper, and I just ripped it and inked it and sewed that right behind that image there. This is some real fuzzy yarn that I had, and I just stitched that on there. I hand stitched it like in 4 places to secure it, but I wanted it to remain poofy, so I just kind of left it that way. Here's some tiny little tags I had. I've had them forever because they're so tiny I don't have a chance to use them a lot, but they came in handy here. So these are just images I ripped the edges, inked them, and then attached them onto the tags, put some little twine. Some more vintage buttons. So another pretty image. This is paper as well, ABCD. I just cut out that portion, stitched it on. Here's just a very random sized sari silk, and I just stitched that on. Here's a stamp. This is an actual stamp. Nope, this is from decorative paper. I just cut it out and stitched it on there. This is a real key, and I hand sewed that on. This is a string of beads. I strung the beads on. I pulled the thread through, strung the beads on, and then pulled the thread back down through it and just knotted it on the back side. So it's just a little string of beads. It'd be cute to put it on like a safety pin too. So another little medallion, piece of paper. This lace is going at an angle. This is just a portion of a picture. These are 2 little round images. And what's funny, I don't know if you can see it, so here's some lace right here, and look at how those round circles fit right in there I thought that was so cool how that turned out. Just some paper flowers. Those are glued on. This image is stitched on. So these are paper. These are paper flowers. Here's a vintage button. And then at the end here, this is an image that I clipped out of another piece of paper. Just little snippets of ribbon and lace. A bulb pin, garment pin with a charm dangling down, and another piece of fabric that I stitched on. So that is, those are the details that I put on this particular snippet roll. So that might give you some ideas on what you can put on the snippet roll once you get all finished with it. And now I'm going to put that off to the side. So how do you start making one? Probably a year ago I had seen, I don't even know how long ago, it was a while ago, I had seen Nick the Booksmith do a video on a snippet roll, and this is very similar to the way she does it. I'm not 100% sure if it's exactly the same, but this is very similar. So I usually start out with muslin. You can start out with any fabric that you like. It could be, you know, it could be something you don't like. It could be something else neutral, but a different color. I have this beautiful Tim Holtz fabric. You know, I could use that. It could be anything. Maybe it's something that you don't even like, but I mean, I wouldn't go, it's probably going to show a little, so I wouldn't go like this. but lots of neutrals, like something like this would be really cute. As you can see, I don't have a lot of this left, but I love this fabric. So anyway, usually start with muslin. It's very inexpensive. You can get it on sale quite often, or look in the remnant section at the fabric store. You can almost always find a little roll of muslin. And if you're a junk journaler, you probably use muslin a lot anyway, so I'm guessing you would have some on hand. So the size, make it however you like. The snippet roll I just showed you is 2.5 inches wide. And I made them the width of the fabric, so you generally have like a 22-inch width of fabric, and I just marked off 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. I think I made 4. I made 5, actually. I made 5, and so I just marked that off and cut my fabric, and then I did all my background first, and then I cut it into my strips. So you will need a piece of fabric to your liking. Maybe you don't need a huge giant snippet roll, so you definitely don't need to make it that big. So here's a piece that I cut out already, and let me see, it is 14, so it is 35 inches, and I made it so that I could have 2 snippet rolls at 2.5 inches. I did cut it 6 inches wide because the way I've been doing it, I put my strips on and then I trim it down, so I made it an extra inch wide for that. So any length you like, any width you like. I made some snippet rolls, like for example this one is 2 inches, and that's also a wonderful size. So whatever size you figure out you need. Might have to do a tiny bit of math, but just a tiny bit. No big deal. No big deal. Okay, so now that you've got your fabric, I usually just rip the edges. I don't bother to cut. You could cut. It's no big deal. You could cut, but I usually just rip the edges. All right, and then what you'll need to do is attach some heat and bond. I had the roll handy so I could show you what it is. So it's a glue sheet, and there are different brands. And, oh, I am looking for my roll, and I can't find it. I don't know what I did with it, guys. I had it all handy, ready to go. Heat and Bond is a glue sheet, and sorry, it just bothers me so much that I can't find that. Oh well. I'm going to press on. So it's Heat and Bond by, the company's name is ThermoWeb, and you can buy it so many places, hobby stores, fabric stores. I can even buy it because people use it for hems or to put patches on, and so you can find it even at your grocery store if you have a, you know, a decent sized sewing section at your grocery store, kind of a variety grocery store. Walmart carries it in packages that's usually hung up on a peg shelf. So you can find it in a number of places. It's a glue sheet with a protective paper on it. Okay, so what you're going to do next is decide which is your front and back, and if you have muslin, of course, it's not going to matter at all. And then you're going to follow the manufacturer's instructions and then iron that onto your, so it's heat activated, right? So you're going to iron that onto your muslin and iron it on the whole way. Just for demonstration purposes, I just did halfway here, but just the whole thing. If you have a long strip, just go for it. What I really like about that is, I'm sorry, now we've got glare from the light there. What I really like about it is, I'm going to put this sheet of paper here, is that lots of times we have little scraps of heat and bond and we don't know what to do with them. Well, this is the perfect project because it does not matter if you have like a little seam here with no glue. It doesn't matter at all. Now, if you're making a journal cover, you don't want that seam, but on this project, it doesn't matter at all. So it's super nice to use up your scraps, and that's what I did here, as you can see. So you're going to iron that on to manufacturer's instructions. Usually it's just get your iron really hot and iron it till it sticks. Then when it's cooled off, you can peel off the paper. And when you peel off the paper, see the shine? That's your glue. It's perfect. I've got lots of little pieces, so I'm going to go ahead and take these off. Love, love, love how easy this makes it. This makes it very, very easy. I do a lot of this in journal covers, and this is also a great way to use glue sheets. It's wonderful. Okay, so then what do? We're going to make our background. So let me show you. I already gave you a little glimpse at this, but this is what it looks like before it's decorated. This is my background of my snippet roll. So you can see I use lace fabric. Here's a little ruffled trim that I bought on clearance at Hobby Lobby. I've got some antique laces in here. I love this. This is a ribbon, a measure ruler, like a ruler type ribbon, and I love that on there. But you can see, like, this is a little bit of a thicker trim. Just got laces, and then some of them I put on top of each other because I didn't want, for example, these laces have a lot of holes, and I didn't want it to be like just showing through. The glue sheet is shiny, and so a lot of those bigger laces with bigger holes I put on top of a piece of fabric. Now, and you can layer it up a little bit, but I wouldn't layer it too much because if it's going in a journal, you don't want it to be like piled high, right? And the other thing is that you don't have to do just solid strips like I did, but it really worked out well because then I was able to randomly put things on the way I wanted to and sew little extra things on top at angles. So, I mean, I really liked that, but you certainly don't have to. You can put, you know, things at angles on here. That's no problem. Now, if you do put something on top of something else, like here's some sari silk, and then this has the trim, it's not going to stick to this, right? Because this is just the first layer that is going to stick. So you'll put some Fabri-Tac or something similar behind here to keep it to stick before you take it over to your sewing machine. But everything, as you can see, everything I have on here is stitched. But you'll want to stabilize it before you take it over to your sewing machine. At least I do, and I think it makes it super quick and easy. All right, so what to do next? That's what I started saying. So we're going to lay some trims and scraps all over the place here and make a layer going down. And like I said, you could go, you know, you could go sideways and then this way, but a super quick and easy way is to make them all the same length. You know, and they can stick out the sides a little bit because we're going to be trimming that. And then when I have a nice scallop, I like to put the fabric underneath it a little bit. Okay, so just start laying things like that. Just keep going like that. This trim, you know, it's not going to stick up in a nice gathered, it's going to sort of be flattened because we have to iron this. The next step is going to be ironing. Here's some cute fabric. I'm going to put that under there. Leave just enough room so that, just enough room so that I can hopefully catch the heat and bond on this little trim. Okay, so here's a large, see, lots of holes, so I'm going to want to, I'll probably overlap that with that, and then maybe come in with this one underneath it. Or, you know, if you don't want to put your fabrics that close together, you could come along later and put something over the top of it. Like that. That actually looks really pretty. I'm going to leave that like that, which means I can pull this down a little bit. I don't have to use it all the way underneath. Okay, and then let's see, let's get, here's a little lace with red on it. I'm going to do that. Okay, and so on. You guys get the picture, and use what you have. Use whatever scraps. And I'm going to put that on top like that. And then just keep going down the whole sheet. Then you're going to take this over to your ironing board and iron it down. If you would like, for example, this is going to have to be glued, right? So you could pin that on for now so that your placement doesn't get messed up. And this one as well. This one's on top of the fabric. So you can pin that down, or you can just very carefully take it over, iron it. And you can do it in small sections, right? You don't have to do this whole thing at the same time. You can iron this section, would actually be a really good idea. Iron this section first. Come in with your 3-in-1, your Fabri-Tac or Fabri-Fix. Put just a few dots, not toward the edge, but in the middle to secure those layers that are on top. Okay? Do that, and then you'll be all set for taking it to your sewing machine. And I am going to iron this down. I'll be back in a minute. I'm going to iron that down, and then I'm going to take it to my sewing machine so you can see what it looks like there, and then we'll trim it. So I'll be back in a minute. Hi there, I'm back. I did find my heat and bond I wanted to show you, and make sure to tell you that it should be the light, L-I-T-E, they spell it. Heat and bond light, because that is okay for the sewing machine. Otherwise, your sewing machine will hate you, you'll hate your sewing machine, and it will be a not happy business. So sometimes you'll find the heat and bond in packages like this, or it does come on the roll too. So either way, and actually I think even Joann's carries both types too. You can buy it on the, I know roll is not the right word. Anyway, so you can buy it by the yard, or you can buy it hanging up in a package. So, but make sure it's the light, otherwise your sewing machine won't like you. So here it is all sewn, just the part that I had done. No, normally this whole thing would be done, right? Just the part that I had done, and I have, you can see I was a little off right here. This is not perfectly straight, but some of that will be trimmed off. But it doesn't matter, because I could put an image over the top or something and it won't show, or a little patch, and it'll be fine. So just like that, and I'll show you the back. Some I sewed with straight stitch, some with zigzag. I prefer the zigzag. And or you could put a decorative stitch if you think it's going to show quite a bit. You can put a decorative stitch, that'd be fine too. So that's all secure, all in place. The next thing to do, also, I think I mentioned, you know, the 22-inch wide fabric. That's when it's folded, of course. So when it's unfolded, it's 44 inches, and so that's what my snippet roll was that I showed you earlier. It was 44 inches long. Also, if you have shorter pieces, you can sew them end to end. In fact, this is 22 inches, and so what I will do, I left a space right here so I can sew another roll on it if I want to make it longer. So keep that in mind also when you sew this. This is really close to the edge, so that won't work for sewing another one to it, unless I hand stitch it sort of you know, butt it up against another one. But to machine stitch it, I think this would be too bulky. So make sure you could leave a 1/2 inch or so at the top, and that way you can, you know, put 2 pieces together, which is, you know, which is a good way to do it. All right, so let's trim this up. You can just cut it. You can mark it with a pencil or some kind of a fabric marking tool and then just cut it, and that would be perfectly fine. I happen to have, I'm a quilter and a sewer, and I am privileged to have some cutting tools that are very handy for this type of thing. And so I brought over a real small mat. This is actually, you can see it's totally wearing out. It's got half of it's missing right there. But for the video, I thought it would be handy to bring this over. So I have this, I have a rotary tool, super handy, but you don't need it. You can just use scissors. And you can see how rough my edges are. So I'm going to trim that all off and show you how I do that. So you just line up your long edge of your ruler and just use your rotary cutter if you have one, which is, like I said, it's just extremely handy. And then just trim it away like that. I sometimes keep these, isn't that crazy? Because for snippets, I have a little jar of little pieces like this, and they come in handy for snippets. Or little clusters when you're making them. Okay? And, you know, this would be the whole length if that's what I was doing, but right now I just sewed a little bit so you guys could see. Okay, so those, now you've got a nice trim piece. Then I would measure in, this has a grid marking, right? So I would measure in 2.5 inches or 2 inches or whatever your preference is. And now I have to finish this before I cut it, so I'm just going to show you, but I'll measure in 2.5 inches and trim. And then you'll have a nice strip, which will look like this one right here. And then when I cut the strips, what I do is I'll put a zigzag stitch on the edges. I don't know if you can see that. So there's a zigzag stitch along each edge, and it does not take, I mean, this looks so complicated, but you don't even have to lift up your needle. You can, you know, you can turn it and keep sewing, and then turn it and sew. Like, you don't even have to lift up your needle. So anyway, I sew the edges as well, and you can probably do this in a number of ways. I'm just letting you know the way I do it, and it's worked out really, really well. So and so anyway, your cut snippet roll will look like this, and then it's ready to embellish, just like some of the ways I showed you. So many different things you could put on them, but I mentioned some, but sky's the limit, right? Just all kinds of ideas that you can come up with. And this is a great way to use, if you bought a huge tin of buttons, this is a good way to help you use up buttons. It helps you use up scraps of all kinds. So wonderful way to do this. So when you embellish this, you can sew right on it, right? This is just fabric, mostly 2 layers, sometimes 3 of fabric. I think all kinds of trims would be fun on here too, like rickrack. I didn't have any rickrack that was a decent color. It was like, you know, hot pink and orange and stuff. And you can make this any style. So you could make a, you know, a very happy color, rainbowy looking snippet roll if you'd like to, or you can make it sort of vintagey like this one. Lots of ways to do it. So I hope that answers your question. Some things you're going to have to hand sew on, and you know, it's fabric, so it's perfectly fine, but it goes pretty quickly. You'll be surprised. One thing I did want to mention too are some handy things size-wise. From GeckoGalz, I did get several sheets of these beautiful images. They have a lot of jewel making collage sheets, and so like, look at these ovals. Wouldn't that be pretty on there? Just cut out those ovals. You might even have a die that you could, that would be the right size. But this is what I used a lot, is these like domino sized images, and you can use them as is because they'll fit on here because they're 2 inches long. Or you know, just to use a portion of it. Just use a portion. You know, just like rip around this flower, for instance, and then ink it up and just use that little flower image. So these types of small images are wonderful. These are all from GeckoGalz. So since I pulled them out, let me just show them to you. Aren't they pretty? Like you could, this would be a wonderful soft pastel colored one. Oops, I've got my light kit hanging down. Let me put that out of the way if it'll go. Doesn't look like it's going to work. It's stubborn. And then this is another sheet of that. And then these are 2-inch squares, which is a nice size, but you could trim, you know, you could trim a bird off of there and put that on the snippet roll. So those are just some ideas, some things that came in handy. They also have a bingo collage sheet, and I just printed it smaller. And so I think I used a bingo card on that other snippet roll, but I don't remember showing it to you. This is how it came out. Isn't that cute? Little bits of lace, like the decorative. I just snipped these off of a larger piece. So things like that. I thought these would be pretty on there. Just, you know, cut or tear around one of the smaller images. These are from Nevermore Creation 17, and I thought these tickets would be really cute too. They're a little bit big, so I might trim those down too. But, you know, use stuff like that. Super cute. If you've got a fun word, look, here's maraschino cherries. I think that would be cool. Just, you know, tear around that, ink it up, and sew that right on. If this paper that you're using is a little too thin, go ahead and back it with another piece of paper, maybe even a cardstock or a book page. Just use that as a background for one of your pictures or something like that. So just a few things I grabbed so I could show you. All kinds of fibers and trims. So that's how I make the snippet roll. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I have several bases like this made up, so I'm going to be putting more in the shop, but I don't have any in there right now as I film this. But thanks for checking us out. We have a blog, Etsy shop, and obviously this YouTube channel, and we would so much appreciate it if you would follow along with us, subscribe if you haven't already, and Cindy and I did talk about a giveaway pretty soon. I don't know, keep your ears open. All right, guys, take care. I hope you have a fantastic year ahead, 2020, hard to believe, and we will talk to you later. Goodbye.